Welcome to the channel, and in this video I'll be going over my Punisher film collection. He's one of the first Marvel characters that I ever checked out when I first started getting into comic books. There's been 3 different incarnations for the big screen, and for this video I won't be including Jon Bernthal's version of the character, since his Frank Castle only appeared on the Netflix shows, along with the upcoming Daredevil Born Again series. Now with that out of the way, let's get into the video. The first live action incarnation came out in 1989 and starred Dolph Lundgren as Frank Castle. This is a pretty forgotten Marvel film, and rightly so, since the movie doesn't want to embrace the fact that it's based on a Marvel comic. Plus, this Frank Castle never dons his infamous skull logo. The movie keeps some of his backstory with his family being murdered and him becoming a vigilante afterwards. The movie is a solid action film and feels similar to films like Commando and Rambo First Blood Part 2, and that could be because the director Mark Goldblatt was the editor of those films. This was the last film he directed, and he went back to becoming an editor and even was nominated for an Oscar for his work on Terminator 2. This movie is yet to get a Blu Ray here in the States, but Umbrella Entertainment put this out on Blu Ray, and it's region free, so you can watch it no matter where you are. It also came with new interviews with Dolph and Goldblatt. Also dig the reversible artwork they did for this release. The second big screen iteration came out in 2004, and this time Thomas Jane took over the titular role. I showcased this DVD in my part 2 of DVDs I Can't Part With video series. Please check that out if you haven't yet already. But this DVD has the extended cut of the film, which adds about 20 more minutes to the runtime. This cut was never added to either the Blu Ray or 4K releases of this film. I have a lot of love for this movie, and you'll see because I own various releases of this movie. I even still have the soundtrack, and it feels very 2004 looking at the bands that were featured. But what's cool about this DVD and the movie in general is how much Tim Bradstreet was involved. He worked on the animated opening sequence to this film and did a bunch of promotional images as well. Tim Bradstreet did a bunch of Punisher covers around that time, and the first ever Punisher comic I bought had one of his covers on the front. I like how the back says a tale true to its Marvel Comics origin, and it's like, well, not really. It's been pretty well established that the Punisher is a New York-based vigilante, and yet this movie primarily takes place in Tampa of all places, which I learned recently was only because Travolta wanted to pilot his plane around and Florida was apparently the most accommodating. It was also probably because the Church of Scientology is located in the Tampa area. He's also the worst part of this movie. The best part of the movie is easily the fight between the Russian, played by pro wrestler Kevin Nash, and Frank Castle in Frank's apartment. It's this long drawn out fight that perfectly balances brutality and comedy. I want to just give a quick shout out to the Punisher video game for PS2. This isn't technically a movie tie-in game, but it does borrow elements from the movie. One being Thomas Jane came back to voice the character, which is pretty awesome. And the game faithfully recreates the awesome fight scene with the Russian from the movie. This is up there as one of the best superhero games for me. I love this game, and it's everything you'd want out of a Punisher story, which was co-written by Garth Ennis and features appearances by Matt Murdock, Black Widow, Iron Man, Nick Fury, among many other Marvel characters. It remains as the best adaptation of the character in any medium. Next up is the 4K Steelbook of the Thomas Jane Punisher film that was an exclusive to Best Buy back in 2022. No new special features were added, but it does port over all the previous bonus features, including the music video for Step Up by Drowning Pool. Orlando Aracena, and I'm probably mispronouncing his last name, but he did a great job on the artwork for this release. I kinda wish Lionsgate commissioned Tim Bradstreet to do the artwork for this release, since he did work on the movie, but regardless, I still really dig this artwork. I like how Orlando incorporated the big climactic car explosion that forms the Punisher skull, which is a bit ridiculous looking back on that, but as a kid, I thought that was cool as fuck. But I never took into account how implausible that would probably be, and really only people high above would actually notice it. The back also features a pretty cool image of Frank. This version of the Punisher wears a leather duster, which was all the rage back in the early 2000s. I'm surprised this never got re-released because a lot of these steelbooks that were exclusive to Best Buy wound up getting put out again at Walmart. I hope they put it out again for any of the people that missed out on this. The last release I have of the 2004 Punisher film is the UMD, which features the original artwork you may have seen on most physical releases of this film, and it features Tim Bradstreet's artwork of Thomas Jane in that sweet leather duster. I could do without Travolta being on the cover, but they were really banking on his stardom to sell the movie. I'm not sure if that really helped in retrospect. Even my dad, who was a big fan of Travolta, never watched this movie, which part of my indifference towards Travolta comes from my dad thinking Travolta was like the coolest movie star. My dad's taste in pop culture was fucking atrocious, whereas mine is objectively just impeccable. Lionsgate didn't put out many UMDs, and I do like the cross promotion on the inside, but I'm glad they chose to put this movie out on one of my favorite formats.
Go with God. God's gonna sit this one out.
Next up is my personal favorite Punisher film, that being Punisher War Zone. I was pretty hyped when Lionsgate announced that this movie was getting the Steelbook treatment. I wasn't sure if this movie would get a nice release since the movie bombed pretty hard at the box office. It's one of the lowest grossing movies based on a Marvel character. It's a bummer because I think Lexi Alexander did a great job with this movie. She mainly directs TV now, but I think she's a great director. And check out one of her prior films, Green Street Hooligans. It's a great fucking movie. I'm also not wrong in thinking this movie is severely underrated and straight up just like misunderstood. I don't understand why people don't like this movie. This movie is a lot of fun, whereas this movie could just be a dour retread of Death Wish, but it's fun and the action is a little over the top. The Punisher blows up a parkour meth addict with a heat-seeking missile. Like, how can you not have fun with this movie? Speaking of the Punisher, this version of Frank was played by the late great Ray Stevenson. He does a great job and delivers some awesome one-liners.
Let me put you out of my misery.
If you skipped this movie or didn't care for it your first time around, then I just implore you to give this movie another shot. It may not be the depiction of a Punisher story that you're typically used to, but there are Punisher stories that are a bit over the top in its depiction of violence. So go into it expecting something akin to an 80s or 90s R-rated action film, and you actually may enjoy yourself. I also own War Zone on UMD. This was only released in the UK, but it is region free, so it plays on my region A PSP. Sadly, it didn't come with the case. Hopefully someday I'll find a case for it, but I do typically always bring this movie with me whenever I travel. Thanks for watching this video on one of my favorite comic book characters. I'm sorry I've been slacking on videos lately. I'll be putting out more videos just in time for my favorite time of the year, so expect some videos that will be more horror centric, but until then, have a movie time.
Sometimes I'd like to